Okay, let us continue. So, I was about to create a class which would handle the database, which could handle the data persistency. This time we are using SQLite in order to persist our data. So, I told you the procedure of storing the data in a database environment which is external to your application framework. SQLite is an open source database engine which is written using C and C++, which is widely found in most of the gadgets devices where a personalized database is required. It is very small, some KBs of size only, the entire database, but it still gives you a flexibility to write and execute standard query languages of whatever up-to-date standard of the queries introduced. You can have a complex queries to a normal query, anything you can write using SQLite database. For further information, you can refer the SQLite website, and there they have some sort of instruction about how to use it. But Android by default contains SQLite engine, so we don't need to install anything. So typical database transaction involves in various stages depending on the OEM or maybe a manufacturer. As far as SQLite, you need to open the database, do a transaction and close the database. That's a procedure. So while open the database, we have to make sure such a database exists, or if the database exists, and there should be tables created, or how we are going to handle if at all an upgrade is received, invoked. So as far as this particular example, I created a class called mydb where I am going to write certain helper functions so that I can do uh, the CRUD operation, like I can create, update, delete and whatever thing associated with the database. And this particular class has one more inner class which is something takes care of opening and creating the database and tables, uh, or if at all any upgrade is issued. That class is defined as one of inner class, and I have given the name called mydb helper, which has a parent class called SQLite open helper. And you need to implement the constructor, and one being context, another being the name of your database, another the factory, what do you call, cursor factory, and database version. As of now, the cursor factory version is set to null. It's not nervous. I'm not going to modify any behavior of a cursor. So rest of the detail has been given. So the moment this mydb helper is called, it is initialized. Of course, it is being initialized in a constructor. When it is initialized, it will go ahead and create a database for you. If a database is already existing, it will leave it as it is. If a database is not existing, it will create. So it is thread safe one. If a database exists, it will go ahead and create the tables. But remember, this will be called only when a database never exists. If a database is existing, this block won't be called at all, because it will be assuming the database is already created, so it won't create the tables. So when a database is newly created, it will create the database, and when successfully database is created, this method will be called, and in this method I am executing a query of a create table statement where respective tables will be created under the database. So in this case, I have a table name called a shopping table with various fields, and its field type has been declared in this way. I wanted to keep a primary key underscore id for obvious reason. I am planning to use some of existing cursors which requires the primary key defined as underscore id. Rest is as our choice. And item id since it is a primary key, I explicitly tell it is a type integer and primary key and auto increment. Typically auto increment by default added, but for safer side, a primary key with auto increment will give a clear idea about how I'm going to handle the database. A good database design always will consist at least one primary key. Naturally, at least one primary key is allowed, But a good database schema, for every table there will be one primary key. Without a primary key, a database schema is useless, or maybe it is poorly designed. So I recommend keeping a primary key, and it is of type integer, and it is having auto increment. So it means automatically the ID will be assigned for subsequent new entries. So this particular helper creates a table, and it also handles upgrade. If at all the version number changed, a new version introduced, this block will be called, on upgrade will be called. Usually we drop all the tables and recreate the table in order to empty the particular table and have the schema written in a, maybe in a default or resetted, whatever way. So defining drop table, if exists the particular table name, it will delete all the tables, delete the table called shopping table, and also make sure it is recreate. So this block is only for handling database creation and giving the read or write access to the database. This is one of our inner class has been defined. Now I need the instance of a database called SQLite database so that I can do a transaction. Naturally, I also have an inner class which is called myDB helper, that also I declared it. Now I am initializing the myDB helper in the constructor of the particular class what I have written. This is called myDB. I initialize DB helper this way. Using the DB helper, I have two helper method. One is going to take care of opening the database and giving the write access, and another one is closing the database. So DB now initialize using a DB helper dot get writable database. Now you have a valid SQLite database instance created for you, and database is open for you, and you have access to modify or do anything. And this method will take care of closing the connection of a database. And I started adding the useful helper methods. Easiest one is using the raw query statement or raw query method, where you can supply the database query directly as a formatted string. So in this case, select start from shopping table where item ID equal to something and item name something. So this question mark is considered as a placeholder, where the values will be given as a selection arguments of type array. So the first value, it always takes a string input, so I have item ID as of type integer or long, whatever value I need to convert it to a string. Otherwise you can, if you are having a little difficulty, you can even make it as anything gets concatenated with the string becomes string. So this will become a string, and this item ID will come here and apple will come here. So it will form a valid query. So select start from shopping table where item ID equal to 1 and item name equal to apple, something like that. But forming the query and having a literal meaning of a query is not recommended in a object oriented or maybe a professional level coding. So we should have some sort of data or object wrapping in order to form the query. And Android by default has some useful methods in order to form the query. One being, I'm using db.query, which is a function which takes various arguments. The first argument being a table name, and second being how many number of columns. Typically you can also keep null. So let me see, which is discouraged to prevent reading data that isn't going to be used. Okay, passing null will return all the columns. It is null is equivalent to star, but actually which is discouraged to prevent reading all the data. So you better define it as a what are all the column you want to retrieve. So I have created a string. I'm going to retrieve these all the columns like item ID, item name, item nodes, item price, item quantity. So you need to pass how many columns you want to retrieve. Otherwise you can safely pass null will retrieve all the columns. Select star. If I give null, mean it is actually meaning select star. Otherwise, you can give the column names directly as a array of string. And third one is a condition. Something comes after where. So select a table name, select start from table name where item ID equal to something. So the placeholder question mark comes, and that value should be given through the selection arguments such as this way, which we previously did. So this will make sure a valid query formed for you, and rest you can keep it null if you are not having any requirement. Those are all like a complex query pattern you can form it, group by having this particular value, order by primary key, or you want to have ascending descending order, whatever you can do it. And you can also give a limit if required, but I do not see any requirement as of now. I kept everything null. So this will make sure a valid query internally built for me, and it will be equivalent to select star from item ID equal to some value. That's it. This query will form. And I'm going to add a subsequent methods. I'm going to add one more method, get all items, which will retrieve all the items. Same thing, db query columns. I'm not having any selections because select star from table name. That's it I want. I don't want any selection or selection arguments. All is null in this case. This will retrieve select star from database table. That's it. So it will retrieve all the content. So this will retrieve all items. I may need to add insert statement. I'm going to add item, the name. Now I need a parcelable object such as bundle in order to form a insert query. The database specific parcelable object is called content value. First I create a empty content value. Now I put various keys, item name, so let me build the object. I don't need to insert the item ID, which will be automatically inserted, so we don't need to worry about that. Item price, item quantity, yeah. Item notes. I built an object called content values this way. Now insert the content value. The statement is already there. Insert into the table called shopping table. Null column hack, I would recommend keeping null because in order to insert the data, all null value is not allowed in SQLite. Mean already we have made sure is all set to not null. Sometime when you insert something, uh, item name, item price, item quantity, item nodes, everything you want to keep it null, mean it is not allowed. So you can make sure null column gets set. As far as the content value, even in SQLite database, all null values are not accepted, and the content values being inserted. So this will make sure the new values with a key mapped with that is inserted to a database table. So it is equivalent to insert into table name, and of course with the corresponding values being given. So this will form a valid insert statement for you. You don't need to write an insert statement manually now. And inserting will give a return value, the row of ID newly inserted. So if you want to know which row it has got inserted, that also you can retrieve it, which is coming as a long type. It means the ID where it has got inserted could be retrieved. The primary key will be coming as a result. So this is for inserting the items into database, and I need to add what I need to add update. So update statement also I need to create before writing delete. Update is also going to take the same thing, except it is going to be updating a particular item which is having ID. You can say item ID. Same thing I need to build, same content values, except it has one more argument called item ID. So db dot, there is a statement called update exist, need a first argument the table name, values which has got written, where class, so which row you want to update it. So that is going to be item ID same strategy. So this will build a valid update statement for you. So update set, keep giving a values where item ID equal to some value. So this will build a update statement. It will update the particular values of the given item ID. And of course that is also going to return an integer type. What kind integer it is? The number of rows affected. Maybe sometime the executed query may update one or more tables. So how many tables got affected, that also could be identified. So I'm going to make it an integer. So add is done, update is done, select, I mean getting all the values also done. Now only I have delete statement. I'm going to delete a particular item having an item ID. It is pretty straightforward. So db delete, in which table you want delete, where class, of course the same where class. This will build a valid delete statement for you. So it is also returning integer, the number of rows affected if a where class is passed in, 0 otherwise. Okay, fine. If it all required, we can see that as well. So I have written methods which almost does all the work for the specific project what I am working on. I mean the previous project. So I have customized this class according to that. It means it has only one table because my project requires just one table. If at all required another table, I will think about adding them. And it has some 4 or 5 helper methods. The primary helper method is open and close database, and other methods in this particularly 3 methods which only do a select statement, mean retrieve all the data or particular data. This one will take care of adding a content, I mean adding a data to a database. This will take care of updating a particular item in a database. This will take care of deleting an item of a particular database. So almost we have formed all the required parameters or required methods for a database. So you can straight away use this code for your wherever you have a database specific things, copy paste it, use it, or modify wherever it is needed. Accordingly you can do it. So this particular method particular class going to be very useful where you want to write SQLite specific data persistence. Even though we have completed, but we have to make sure it is working. I need to verify if there is no spelling mistake or anything else, but if it is there, let's see what kind of error you will get. Now I am going to use this database in order to insert or update some item. So I'm going to hard code it to start with. Later I'll bring the form here also. Then we will insert the item to the database. First thing, how to use this. So myDB is a class. You can initialize that class in a standard Java way, which need a instance context, because just a class only. This is nothing specific, just a class. It has one constructor which takes argument context. The moment I call this line, the moment I do this, what it will do immediately, it will initialize mydb helper internally because it is encapsulated. Mydb helper is a private argument, it is an encapsulated one, and it will immediately go ahead and call this myHelper class, create the database, create the tables. The moment I call this line, here itself the process will be initiated. I want to verify tag. I'm going to use the DB name itself. Let me see the statement. So I should see in a log confirming database created, and also I should see the create query and execute it. So I'll just put a log statement in order to check. This also I'll put it, but it won't be called. Okay, for my better understanding. So I'm going to assume the database should be successfully created. If anywhere that particular log you are not seeing, something went wrong there. So you have to see them. So DB should be created, later the table should be created. If at all you are changing the upgrade, for example, if you change the version number, the upgrade automatically pushed. So this block will be executed. So let me verify. Log itself quite silent. I think I'm seeing some statement here. DB created has come. Maybe I do not see. Don't see the output at all. Okay. Okay, let me change the version number, because why that particular part is not called. Maybe I need to open it. I'm opening the database. Okay, the create statement, now I see it. So DB first created, and I do see a create statement also called create data table something ID integer. So all looks fine. It got successfully executed. So internally a database and a table also got created. Now time to insert some values and retrieve it back, so I can see whether it has been inserted properly or not. Writing in onCreate should be very careful, because every time when you open application it will insert, but as for since it is for testing, so we can safely do it. So my DB add item, I'm going to say Apple. If at all I want to know what is the primary key, I can use it, otherwise just simply call it. So I'm adding some item. Okay, and if you want to close the database, if you are done with that, you can call close, otherwise wait until the best, maybe the better approach, maybe what I'm thinking right now, make the MyDB global. So in onCreate you open the database, you can call on destroy, where the application or the activity gets closed. There you can close the database. So this will make sure your database is onCreate, it is open. When your activity is no more, your database is safely closed. So that way you can interpret. Otherwise you want to open the database and do a transaction, then close the database, that's also fine. How many times you can open, that many times you can close it. Or you have the database connection open throughout your activity, you only close it when the activity gets destroyed, that is also fine. So I am inserting an item, and I need to write a method in order to see whether my item is inserted. I'm writing one more helper method. MyDB get all items. This will give me a cursor as a return type, that's why I'm capturing the result in cursor. So if we see the method, it is returning a cursor. Get all item, this is the method we have written here. So it will execute this query and give you a cursor as a response. Cursor is a result type. First point, cursor need a active database connection in order to retrieve all the data which is bundled inside. It means you see this stage, it is not acceptable, it is not allowed. It means I'm calling get all items and retrieving a cursor and closing the database, and again I'm trying to see what is the size of a cursor. The point is this particular argument will fail. Reason is, at this point you closed your database. the cursor would lose the connection with your database, so it cannot get the results back. So you should be very careful in order to retrieve the data from the cursor. If you want to close the database, make sure your cursor part is done, then finally call the close. But in our example, our MyDB close is there in the on test try only, so I don't need to worry about it as of now. But only to tell, a cursor, even after retrieving the result set, a cursor would need a database connection in order to unpack the data from it. So this is very important. Now I'm going to extract all the result from the cursor. So I need an array. Cursor is of a kind of that's what say result set, maybe kind of an array. Before starting the cursor, make sure your cursor pointing to the first element. Cursor is a kind of a table. Move to first mean cursor set to 0th position, and from there I'm going to retrieve all the values. Slightly roundabout way, but I'm going to get the item name which is there inside the cursor. I want to retrieve the value of an item name field. How I am going to retrieve from the cursor? Cursor dot get string. Get string, get double, according to what size or what kind of data you are retrieving. Choose the particular get string or get double, and get string of a column index. For example, in which position the item name has been retrieved. That I can easily find. Get all item, select star from. Star mean this particular columns. Putting null will retrieve all the columns, I already told you. Otherwise you can give a specific column. So in this case it is having a string of array called columns. In this it is retrieving the fields in this order. The 0th element is item ID, first element is item name, second element is item node, third one item price, and fourth one is item quantity. I want to retrieve item name, so 0 1. So if the index is 1, if I give, I can get the item name. This is one way, but I cannot every time have a reference to which string or which field I am retrieving. The easiest one, this is one, I will comment it. Same thing, get string. The column index I am going to find it programmatically using the same cursor itself. Get column index of the given string. So my db item name. In this case, the same get string is used, but the cursor will automatically search for a key called item name and retrieve its own index, then map it to get string, and it will retrieve the value safely. So internal searching, so the cursor will look for a key or field name called item name and automatically identify its index and then point it to a get string. So I did manually here write 1, but the 1 will be retrieved programmatically in this way. So if you want to retrieve item name, this way. If you want to retrieve item ID, get double cursor column index my db item ID. So I can retrieve this way the item ID. Like that I can unpack all the fields, item price, item nodes. Make sure you use a get string, get double, or get integer according to. Item ID is not double. Primary key typically integers, because what we gave a primary key type is integer, but the integer specific to SQLite, you can also use, if the integer size is so long, you can use get long also. It is a bigger integer, it can hold a huge number of value between the integers, so both is acceptable. Integer will accept the double format also because it is all part of it. So I've retrieved two things, so let me put a log. So like that I can retrieve all the elements. I just retrieve only two for example, and this is the first element it will retrieve. Every occurrence is done, make sure your cursor move to another next position. So move to next. Initially it will be in 0th position, and it will extract the content and move to another position until the entire cursor is iterated over. When cursor is done with that, you can close the connection of a cursor close, that will get disconnected from the database. So this is one of the approach in order to retrieve the data. Cursor needs active database connection 1. Cursor, even after retrieve, if you want to unpack it, you need an active database connection. So make sure you do not use a database close anywhere in between when the cursor is used. If you want to close the connection, call it after cursor.close. So now you can safely close the connection if at all required, because the cursor is done with the job. If not, keep the connection open. So I'm going to call this after inserting apple, so I should get back the same output. Let me see, I do not get any error, I'll be lucky. Really don't know whether it is running or not. Did I cancel? So far no error. I think it has got added. DB created block will be called multiple times because the constructor is being called, but actually it is not creating the DB every time. I should have put in this place, would have been a safer one, because the constructor will be called every time when the database connection is opened. So DB is once called, that's the reason you are not getting the create table statement again. Anyway, so test. Now it has inserted the apple and it is retrieving from the database apple, and if I close and open one more time it will insert because I have written in on create. So I'm going to close it and open one more time. What's the name I gave? This one. Some reason this is not updating faster. Okay, I'll push it one more time. So twice, I mean previously also it ran. So 3 times the same value has got inserted and it's been retrieved. So a database, according to this, seems to be inserting an item and retrieving it back. And I can also use other functions, but from this little demo I cannot explain everything. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to bring the form of item name something we created. I'm going to attach to it and I'm going to insert the values. After filling the form, I'm going to insert into the database. Then I will convert the list view in order to load the data from the database and display in a list view. So MyDB is going to do a job of the utility hereafter because all keys I have defined here itself. So if you want to define these kind of constants somewhere other or other class, of course you can still do it, but make sure you prefix properly. So let me go back to some exercise. I'm going to need some files. I start from copying the strings because a lot of things there in the string. Copied them. If any images have icon. And I am going to need the menu. What else I need? Layout. All the three. And finally, the manifest entry has to be modified before I copy the item activity. I may have to modify a lot here because item activity calls everything. So I may need a utility for other constants. To avoid error, what I'm going to do, I'm going to define all the constants in MyDB itself. So I'm going to go to utility. If any duplicate comes, we'll see. These are all the duplicates. I need to upgrade 2.9 accurate. So everything now moved to MyDB, so I can delete this. In fact, I don't need this much of, I can directly upload or modify the database here itself. Anyway, since I copied it, let it be. Display message is not there. Okay, so all errors corrected, and the main activity is going to be my launcher activity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a menu. Okay, I can copy from the previous code itself, it will be better. Unwanted block, we'll remove it. First error is I'm not going to need these things. This block I'm going to remove it. So I cleared the code almost. Okay. So cleaned it. It doesn't have anything now, nothing, JSON, preferences. It doesn't have anything, just a simple display which will take me to the another activity. And of course it has an activity result and other constant defined, but I'm not updating, deleting anything here. So a simple blueprint is there. And of course I'm not going to use any version 19 specific, so I can remove this particular thing also. So totally clear. So that name is called main activity. Okay, it's already there. Okay, now I need to define another activity. Item activity, I don't want the prefix. So everything done. Main activity doesn't have anything to with the database here. So far nothing is here. I'll add it, but before I want to make sure my UI works. Update. I'm not even cancelling, it is saying cancelled. Now it is ready and I can go ahead and add an item. So this form I'm going to use it for inserting an item to a database. So let me start the modification now. Instead of bringing the data to main activity and do or update into a database or anything else, I prefer directly inserting here itself, mean in item activity itself. The previous example primarily we targeted for how to handle the bundleable object between the activity. That's the reason I brought it here and take that particular object to another activity and brought it back. Since we are comfortable right now, I'm not going to need such a roundabout way. So what I can do is I'm going to keep a minimalistic one. Okay, let this part be as it is. Add item, it goes to this one, so it's looking fine. This is item new. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to insert the database here itself. Add item name. Should convert it to a double, but I'll come back to it. Item quantity, item nodes. So I don't need to bring it and take it out. So I'm going to remove the entire block. I only need to say like whether the item inserted or not. That's the only thing I need. Rest I do not need. So add item throwing some error. Okay, I need to make these guys as double. The string should be converted into a double. This could be exception throwing one, so make sure you enter numbers alone. Okay, two double values. So when I call this method and close the database, so I am done with inserting an item directly to a database. Now it is inserted to a database, and this I should keep it. Insertion job should be here. This part should be for update. Update item requires item ID. Item ID I need to send. So instead item position, I'm going to use it as item ID. Okay. Instead item position, I'll rename it as a. Already item ID is here. Okay, so fine. Item ID here after integer. I just need item ID instead of others. So if item ID extras read only item index I'm sending. Okay, I need to send item ID, item index from the previous activity. Rest is same. So in this block I add an item, in this block I update an item and pass the bundles to the previous activity. In main activity, time to check. Let me put back the same one, 358 get all from DB. DB open, get the cursor, all items, make the cursor point to move to first, put a for loop, count log, we put just I'm checking item name is retrieved. So cursor get string, cursor get index of item name. So this will retrieve item name. And this will retrieve item ID. Item ID is integer or long type, because I need a string. So get all items from DB will retrieve all the items currently in the DB when onCreate is called. Also, I'm going to make it called when item is added. This on activity result will be called whenever an item is added and when an item is edited. So every time I will get an updated result from the database. And as per this logic, the insertion or anything has been moved to a item activity itself. And I need to add the retrieval option, but before I would like to verify whether add is working. If that works, I can go ahead and attach the list view. I'm going to add an item. I saved it, but list view won't populate, but I want to verify the item has got added. Yes, it has got added. Just trying one single item again and again. Three times it is coming. Why? Yeah, the reason was I haven't finished it. Move to next. I need to move the cursor every time when our first iteration is done, and cursor also should be closed at the end, and DB also can be closed safely. Remember, my DB it's a local instance, that's why I'm opening closing in the same function itself. If you have it global, accordingly you can do it. Okay. So the previous Apple entry was previous example, I mean previous execution, which already has 3 or 4 time Apple added, then Mango added, and let me add one more. And another item also got added. So ID, Mango, everything got added. Okay, we have done up to this. Why not we put a list view also? This is for getting all items. I'm going to do is global. I made the DB global, so it means a DB connection opened in non-create, and when non-create is destroyed, the DB connection will be closed. So in between, I can only execute the queries. I already have a list view, so simple cursor adapter, it is same thing. There is only one difference. I should use this is deprecated and this is only one allowed. Same like a simple adapter. It takes a context and layout item. So it's not item. List item, and it takes a cursor as a input data type. So cursor, I'm going to call this way. The same to from. So which data you want to display, string from. So it's a new string. I want to display item name and item quantity and IDs. Same like up to this, it is exactly same like a simple adapter, but instead of array list of hash map, I'm sending cursor, and from to is same, and it also have a flag, one extra argument. So let's see what is that. Simple cursor adapter and takes a flag as a final input. Flag you can set integer value 0. I'll explain what is flag. For example, we are going to have a slightly difficult task in order to update the data. For example, notified data set changed, which was we were using in order to update our cursor before. But since the data type here is a cursor, cursor would require a database connection. So I need to add an observer or kind of a listener. So whenever database gets changed, the adapter could be updated. So I'll explain that thing a little later, but as of now, you're going to assume the flag is set to 0. Now the adapter is ready. So I'm going to assume it is done. So now the values are coming from the database. The values which is right now coming from the database. I yet to add a delete and edit option, but at least I added the insert option. Of course, that also I need to verify the insert works fine. Before I want to empty the data, So what I can do is I'm going to increase the version to 2. Let it clean the database. So now database is clean because I changed the version. So whenever upgrade is issued, the database will be, the tables will be dropped and it will be recreated. Now it is empty. Whenever a new item is added, we are setting a result called, where it is here. So here the database is getting added. We are setting a result called something add item result core. So it will come here. So I need to update the adapter here. So here is going to be slightly difficult task. Let it make the adapter global. For safer side, I'm going to make the cursor also global. The data type, because previously we used the data types global only, items or JSON array, everything. So that also set to global. I'll try with the adapter notify dataset changed. Let's also duplicate. Okay, query not allowed. First I'll try with the notify dataset change. If it doesn't work, I'll try with other add-ons. It is not updating. If I close, should be having it. So let me see. I'm recreating the cursor and I'm changing the cursor of particular adapter so that it will take effect. Let me see if that works. Okay. Okay, now it is updated. So now it is populating or inserting a new item to a database, and from there the list view is populated. Now the code has become slightly uh, easy to manage. I do not have much of bundles, extras or anything to uh, handle it. I have reduced a lot of extras, and database insertion happens in the next activity itself directly. So insertion happens one place and the retrieval happens another place. And of course I have added with the edit option also. I don't know whether it will work, but need to see. And this will retrieve it, that also I have commented. I need to see how to make that also. Item ID, okay, so I will stop it here itself because further updating will extend the code a little bit. Now what we have done is inserting an item and retrieving the item, that also we have done. Now we need to give an option to edit, delete, and of course view. That also it had a, there is no option I have given so far, so on click won't work. So all the three also we need to give, but the mechanism right now we have in place. We have a content saved in the database. So database right now is defined as a global object in the main activity. First thing on the top, the moment I add the layout, I open the database. From the database, I retrieve a cursor. That cursor is attached to a simple cursor adapter. Let me try the cursor unnecessarily a global object. Could be a local also. Since I am using change cursor means it will update the cursor. So a new cursor will come and will be attached to it. Existing cursor will be replaced. So notify thing also I have removed. Want to verify if that works. Works. So we should be very conservative on using objects. So change cursor, adapter change cursor will only work for simple cursor adapter or cursor adapter. Change cursor means it will replace the existing cursor with the new cursor. So I create a new cursor by simply calling get all items. A new cursor instance will come. So it will be added to a adapter. So previous cursor will be removed, a new cursor will be added. So result is a updated database. This is only for log purpose. So want to see whether items are coming, but there is no use. So mostly simple cursor adapter, which takes the cursor as a input data type and bind with the view, and which is also holding the similar one, item name, item quantity, like IDs is mapped accordingly. The only condition is simple cursor adapter to work, your DB, the primary key should be having underscore ID, otherwise it won't work. If you have some different name, it won't work. So if you want to use simple cursor adapter, the primary key is defined as underscore ID, because simple cursor adapter checks for primary key and it always look for a primary key having a name called underscore ID. So rest is straightforward. Most of the part of the code has been simplified, removed, but I do not have option to edit or delete now because I completely disabled them. So a delete option, edit option, everything I emptied it. I'll leave it to you in order to add them. And this loads the content from a database. And this is pretty secure and it is fast, and not like a preference manager. It will highly dependable on one single data type. It is an indexed one. You can easily manipulate them. I don't need to have a dependency over item position hereafter. I can get a primary key value of a particular item and retrieve it, the particular result, and display. So a lot of benefit we have in order to use a SQLite database. SQLite database, in this case, we have created a helper class. The whole class itself I am considering as a helper. All constants I have moved here. It has essential functions such as open, close database, and it has essential functions such as retrieving data, a particular data or all data, or add the data, update the data, or delete the data. And it also has one inner class which takes care of creating database and tables, and also grants the user with the read or write access. So using DB helper only, database open is happening. So DB helper get writable database. If you have a readable database format, you cannot edit the database. You do not have a privilege to change or insert an item. So in order to get a readable database, I need a one more helper function, helper class called DB helper, which takes care of creating the database and tables. And it in fact has two additional abstract method. One is creating a database and creating table. Another one is handling upgrade instruction. Remember, because of my experience, it came in a very first instance, everything went perfectly, but chances are there your first exercise may not work as expected. If at all you mess it up, I'll give an input also here. Sometimes you will forget the space. This won't be, you will think, okay, it's everything fine, so there is no error. Create table, everything I've done, but there is a space missing. So be very careful. If at all something goes wrong, where you could not identify what's the error, try changing the DB version to incremental values. That will reset your database and put into a resetted format, so it will recreate your tables. So I would advise keep changing that. If any errors come, changing that will clean your database one. Otherwise, if you do not want to modify database version, you can change the database name to something different. So it will make sure a new database created for you. So these are all the small hacks or trivial scenarios. And of course, DDMS, if I go to File Explorer, Data, another folder, Data, I don't know what's the name I gave, this one. You see the folder called database is created for you. If you see this, the database and the database name, whatever you have created, if it exists with some subsequent sizes, it means your database is successfully created. If you do not see an entry here, something went wrong in your database creation. So this also you can verify whether your database is successfully created or not. This folder will be automatically created. And this is one of a secure and highly guaranteed persistent technology, because database is kept outside of your application. So your data is always protected, and it is also fast. So it can hold a lot of records, thousands of records, and without any problem it can easily load it. The only problem you are going to have may be understanding something about the cursor, because a slightly roundabout way of retrieving the data. But it's fairly straightforward. Cursor get string or which index a particular value sits. So that will always be based on this hierarchy, because the columns we are retrieving. So 0th index is going to be always item ID, first index is going to be item name, item nodes, item price, item quantity as it is. So if you have a little difficulty on adding this extra line, you can always give this way directly. So this will make sure your value is fetched item name, but you have to manually verify. Suddenly if you change the order here, modify it here, naturally you'll have a concatenated effort coming everywhere. So in order to avoid that, I gave a safest way. It will search for a key and retrieve a specific value. So we are almost done. I'm going to upload this code, but I want you to add the edit and delete and view feature also to this exercise. I've only added insert one. I slightly modified the code. I removed various codes, so because I felt that is unnecessary, and I want to reduce the bundling, taking the value from here to there, there to here, because now my database is the external one. I can always retrieve from the database. All I need to know the state of an activity which either opened or closed. That's all I need to know. So accordingly, I will retrieve the data. In this case, I have used simple cursor adapter. A simple cursor adapter is uh, is also an adapter extended from a base adapter, but the data type which it takes is a cursor. Simple adapter takes the data input type as an array list of hash map, and one of our adapter what we created which took the array JSON array. And of course here also you can modify, create your own adapter, and you can change the data type accordingly. So now we have seen a simple cursor adapter. Simple cursor adapter, only thing, in order to refresh the adapter, instead of adapt notify data set changed, I would recommend you to use adapter dot change cursor, so that a query is redone and a new cursor is inserted, so value will be always up to date. So you can use the same here also. I feel both edit and insert looks like same, so I can remove that one of set result also in this case, because both part is exactly looking like same. So it's, I'll leave it to you. So how far you are going to customize this code, how far you are going to make the code much cleaner, I'll leave it to you. And later I will maybe I'll also write and clean up the code, but as of now I'm going to upload the code up to what I have added. Means only insert and view option I have added. The rest I would want you to write. I'll also clean this. So mostly straightforward. Okay, let me put the source code. What kind of formation it is? Because I need to disconnect in order to stop the recording, so I don't have a choice.